Imagine living your life after 50 and feeling energized and excited about your future. Welcome to the Women in the Middle podcast, the podcast for women who are ready to figure out what they want and create the life they deserve. Here's your host and master certified life coach, Susie Rosenstein.
Hey there, today we're talking about what it's like to get a DNA surprise in midlife. Let's go. Welcome back to the podcast Women in the Middle with over 1 million downloads and counting. I'm your host, Susie Rosenstein, your master certified coach, midlife mentor, and I am so glad to be here with you again. Now, today's topic is a pretty heavy one because it often has to do with some level of deception, family secrets, and your identity. And I have to tell you, I've been interested in family trees and genealogy for most of my life. My father was adopted. So with adoptions, sometimes there's secrets and mysteries and things just aren't clear. And in 1992, I took a big step and contacted the adoption agency that placed my father way back in 1935. I didn't get very far, but I did it and I did what I could. And it's been ongoing, and I'll talk about that sometime soon. Putting the pieces of my family history puzzle together has been my mission for decades. It became important to me way before Google and Facebook and DNA kits and sites like Ancestry.com, and all of those things have made it definitely easier today. So to be sure, when your personal identity and family history aren't clear, it can be something in your life that just never feels peaceful, settled, or complete, and can have an enormous effect on you throughout your life. And that is what we're talking about today. But just quick, before we get going, I want to invite you to have a breakthrough yourself. Now, I know when you're stuck in a midlife funk and feeling confused and unclear about what's next, it can be hard to even imagine what might be on the other side. So I want to offer an easy way to start moving in that direction. You can give yourself the jumpstart you need in the form of a breakthrough coaching call. It's a 2-hour private coaching call that's basically a deep dive into what's getting in the way of your clarity. We can coach on anything you need to make a breakthrough because, my friend, I have a feeling you're tired of wasting valuable time. Head over to my website at www.susierosenstein.com and click on the Coaching and Workshops tab, and you'll see the booking link there. And I have a few spots open now, and one of them can be yours. Okay, now let's get started with this whole topic of having a DNA surprise in midlife. Imagine my surprise when I heard basically the same DNA surprise kind of story about discovering that the father who raised you wasn't your biological father. I heard it from 2 different women who didn't know each other within the same week. Just these 2 stories came into my world. And I have to say, I was so confused. I'm like, did I imagine this? Did I hear this before? Did we talk about this already? Because it's a very unusual thing to hear stories like that in the first place, let alone 2 in 1 week. So I knew I needed to hear more, and I wanted to invite them both on the podcast. And that's who you're going to meet today, Connie and Judy. And as I mentioned, my 2 guests today didn't know each other before this interview, but they shared their very personal stories about an intense experience that was similar but different. Each of my guests found out that the father who raised them was not their biological father. As you can imagine, this is the type of discovery that is life-changing. My guest Connie describes her childhood as always feeling different and never fitting in. She sensed that something didn't make sense in her family, and you will soon hear how all of her puzzle pieces slowly but surely started to make sense. Connie had a full life career as a teacher in Southern Ontario, but made the decision to fulfill her lifelong dream of being a chef once she retired. Connie is now a qualified chef, culinary educator, and host of Farm to Fork on Rogers TV in Canada. She's also a mom and a grandmom and is happy with her lot in life. Judy Ben Asher is also my guest today. She's an expert in DNA discovery and DNA surprise. She's a certified NLP practitioner, certified in integrative nutrition, 5-element theory, and an expert mindset coach. While working on a documentary about healing, Judy discovered that she's not related to the father she had known and was a caretaker of. As a result, she experienced identity-level trauma and has made it her mission to help others navigate the ripple effect this discovery has with more ease, calm, and simplicity. Judy now works with people who have gone through or are going through a DNA discovery so they can manage all of the ins and outs of finding out they are not who they think they are. Judy was recently interviewed by Oprah about their shared experience with DNA discovery and the topic of forgiveness. She's also appeared several times on NPR and has an upcoming podcast, Truth Seeker, Healing DNA Discovery, alongside her partner, the 17th Surgeon General of the United States of America, Dr. Richard Carmona, where they discuss DNA discovery and how to navigate getting surprising DNA results. I think you might be surprised about some aspects of these stories. You're going to learn a lot for sure, and also have more perspective if you or someone you know goes through this experience or a similar one. So please enjoy. Hi, ladies. Thanks so much for joining me today on the Women in the Middle podcast.
Hi, Susie. Really nice to be here.
So grateful to be here.
It's so fun to have two people at the same time, and we'll do our best not to talk over each other, but there will be a lot to say. I know that's for sure. So I was very excited to have this conversation with you both and let you share your story, because it's becoming more and more common to discover DNA surprises and family secrets in midlife. That's for sure. There's a lot of reasons for that, primarily the rise of ease and Facebook, like sites like Ancestry and 23andMe and that sort of thing, and Facebook. And then we've been around for a while in midlife, and we have questions and life experience and all kinds of reasons that we are often searching. So it was interesting for me this summer as I heard the same kind of story from each of you within a week or so of each other. So that was weird for me, just, going around my life, and then two women come into my life and share these stories. So Judy, I met you in an online coaching community where you told your story, and I immediately sent you a private DM. And it's funny because we can't remember where that was, but we were both there.
It happened. Yeah.
We were both there. And then Connie, we met at a small farmer's market. And as a podcast listener, you knew I would be interested in hearing your news, and I sure was. So let's start by each of you introducing yourselves, where you live, how old you are, and a little bit about how you grew up, and then we'll dive in after those intros. So Judy, why don't you start?
I am Judy Benesher, and I am now 53. I grew up in Tucson, Arizona, in a big, loud Jewish household, youngest of five, 2 deaths in there. I'll talk about that later, but youngest of 5 kids. So big family. Everyone knows everyone's business, very tight Jewish community. And so it's been an extra fascinating journey for me.
Wow. Thank you for that. And Connie, how about you?
My name's Connie. I am 63, turning 64 in a week. And I was raised in Southern Ontario, but I always tried to get away. So I've lived all over the world. I've lived different continents. And I was semi-raised by my grandparents. They knew that when I retired from my teaching position, that I would bolt and I would make as much distance as I could between my childhood town and where I wanted to live. So I grew up in a family that was very divisive, and I was always a little bit of an outsider. I was always different. And so I sort of grew up taking care of my own problems and figure out a way to navigate through all of that.
Wow. What you said there, that you always thought you were different. Judy, did you have that experience too?
100%. First of all, I look nothing like my siblings. I had a brother with blonde hair, blue eyes. I had a sister and he passed. I have a sister with red hair and blue eyes. I have another sister with blonde, blue eyes. She passed, and a brother with brown hair and blue eyes. And I have black hair and green eyes. So it was always a joke in our household. And my parents had a portrait of us at the front door. And so anyone walking into the house, it's the first comment, every day, my whole upbringing was, you must be from the milkman or the police officer, or it was just always the joke. And I never thought like they did. I'm very dyslexic. My siblings are incredibly brilliant and they just can problem solve differently than I can. I'm highly creative and they are more academia, driven. Just different on every single level. And it was always odd man out. I also problem solve for myself. I love the way she framed that. And it's so true for me too. And, I was always made to feel odd man out. Which is interesting. Being the youngest, I was always, not allowed to do things. But yeah, always tease endlessly about it. And then, my parents also had this weird, birth story for me and none of my other siblings. They had this story about conception. No one else seemed to get, but it was told like at every holiday table. It was sort of the running joke. They went to this dude ranch. It was raining. 9 months later, here I am. My mom used an IUD. She had these earrings made. So she wore these bright red corkscrew earrings and it was sort of a ha ha ha, She wanted to be here so bad. She even got through that thing. It's just, it's fascinating. The more people I hear from and talk to, the more of these kinds of stories I'm hearing, which is just interesting.
So both of you grew up with a family who didn't say a word about, I guess, your situation. In each of your cases, was it an adoption or not?
In my case, I just am the dirty little secret. It was hidden and suppressed and, I have family that won't speak to me now because I'm talking about it, which I'm okay with. Even though it's hard, there's just, when I went through it in 2019, 26 million people went through it in 2019,
wow.
According to MIT. It's a lot of people to have a DNA discovery or a DNA surprise. So I felt like I should talk about it, but yeah, they never told me. I still don't know if my dad did know or didn't know, and he's not talking.
Right. Okay. We'll go more into that in a second. And Connie, how about you? Adoption or not?
No, my mom had an affair and it was the curious thing is it was with my best friend's dad. And so I was raised with going to my best friend's house and seeing like her dad there, and there was never any connection. Never any connection. And I the same thing as with Judy. I don't think the same. I don't look the same. It's a family joke that there's a picture of us at Christmas and everybody says, "Where did you come from? You don't look like any of them." The curious thing, though, is that I do look like my mom's side. So it's not adoption. So my mom is my biological mother. But I think my mom was so young, I believe that she did not tell my dad. But to this day, I still don't know if my dad knew and if he accepted it or if he was duped. And, my mom has dementia. So when I talk to her about it, she conveniently answers whichever way she's feeling that day. So I'm probably never going to know the truth of that. But it was a family joke as well. The idea of my birth story, my dad was in the hospital. Remember, this is 1958, so, they're a different time as well. But when I would say, "Where do I come from?" they would say, "We found you under a rock." And so they always had stories about how my brother and sister, how it all went. And because I was the youngest, I always looked at it, well, maybe I just didn't matter at that point. Once you've been through it a couple times, it just doesn't matter. And I was premature, so my dad would often tell me that I wasn't a very nice looking baby. And so, yeah, that I was a skin rabbit is what he used to call it.
Oh my.
And here's the thing, it's not even in an abusive way. He would just say it like it was a joke. But that's where they said that where I came from is that I was under a rock.
Wow. So I took a step out of a chronological telling of your stories just for a second, but I did it because I just wanted to clarify this birth story situation. So you both had birth stories, even though you weren't adopted. And I wonder how many people have a birth story when, it's just a plain old birth story. I mean, I definitely tell my kids how long I was in labor, but that's about it.
Well, and I would have that because my mom would tell me about my delivery, and my dad would validate it with saying that, I almost died because I was premature, and they would go through that. So it was very believable that they're both there. But it wasn't until years later that I started to see differences.
And what kind of differences did you notice?
I just, my dad's side treated me like I was the pet cat. They wouldn't make eye contact with me, but they really favored my brother and sister. So gifts at Christmas time would not be equal, and attention when we would have family dinners was not equal. And again, I just took that as I was this goofy little youngest child that they didn't value or they didn't see as a full human. I always thought, well, it's just because I'm the baby, they just don't see me.
I had the exact same experience, Connie, which is fascinating to me. I was always treated like I was an other and like I was the neighbor's kid or something,
I was the neighbor's kid.
I am the neighbor's kid also. So it was my parents.
My
it was a
gosh.
friend of my parents, and they had 3 boys and there were 4 kids in our family. So we played with them all the time. I, remember being in their pool all summer because we're from Tucson. And, so we would be at their house all the time, and their dad was really affectionate and loving and kind with me and would talk to me like eye level, look me in the eye, have conversations. My dad that raised me never gave me the time of day, unless he was yelling at me and, or telling me, what I was doing wrong in the moment. So it's really interesting to hear you have such a similar story to mine.
Yeah, and because I don't know if my dad knew or not, there's sometimes when I can think back, and you probably do this as well, Judy, you go back and all of a sudden a memory will trigger and you'll think, that's what that was.
But yeah, all day, every day.
Yeah, and so many things will happen. I'll think, that's why. But I don't know if my dad knew. If he was duped, and I use that word because he was tricked if he didn't know.
Yeah.
And if he was, then I think he just disliked me for some other reason. If he did know, I understand why he was like that, because there would be times when I would, as a teen, we locked horns so many times, and I would say to my dad, why don't you like me? And he'd say, you just think you're different than us. And then as a young 20-year-old, I would say, why is it you still don't like me? And he'd say, you're not one of us.
Fascinating. Yeah, my dad always treated me like an outsider. He says that he knew my parents had an affair, but that he didn't know I wasn't his. But he's also a physician, and I don't look like anybody. And I believe that he knew, but he could have been lied to. I don't know, and he'll never tell. And my mom has passed, and my biological dad has passed. So I'll never also know the truth. And that's definitely one of the hardest parts of these stories. Not that knowing the truth will make us feel better, but there's something unsettling about the not knowing.
Well, Judy, this is where I might differ because knowing the truth has made me feel better. And my mom giving me this information put the final puzzle piece in place, and I felt instant relief, and I felt a weight of not belonging off my shoulders. And I just kept thinking, I would sit beside them and think, as a kid, I would think, I don't belong here. I don't belong to these people. And it would just surface and surface. And I would always think, what's wrong with me that I can't let go and be part of them? And then when she told me that, it was a relief.
I also had that relief when I found out. I found out accidentally.
Well, let's talk about that now.
Okay.
How did each of you find out? So, Judy, go ahead. What happened? Were you looking? You were definitely suspicious, both of you, for your whole lives.
Yeah, but it didn't occur to me at all because it had always been just swept so nicely under the rug. It didn't occur to me in any way. And my mom had ovarian cancer, and I'm a filmmaker also, amongst other things. And I was doing a documentary on healing and about her journey, her cancer journey. And we all did 23andMe for health history. And in my health history, and that was January 2017. In my health history, no one showed up on my dad's side and only 2 cousins I knew on my mom's side. So I really felt like no one in my family had done the test. And I let it go. And then 2 years go by. My husband and I are on a road trip. I'm now my dad's caregiver. My dad who raised me is his caregiver. Even though I have siblings in the same town, they didn't really want to, I was his caregiver. I'll leave it at that. And I mentioned this family to my husband that used to live where we lived and then moved away when I was 8, and we were passing through their town. So I brought it up, and I met my husband in 5th grade. So he knows just about everybody that I know. But he had never heard this name before. And when we got to our destination, he pulled up my 23andMe because he remembered that name was on there. And I kind of hunted it down from there, and it still took a while. And then my dad decided to do a DNA test. And I was not his child. And that's sort of how I found out. Yeah.
So it sounds like your dad found out then?
Well, so as a doctor, you can look at me and look at my siblings, and if you're thinking, right, notice that we don't have anything similar in our facial features or anything. So I think he must have known, but when I had to have that conversation with him, because he's a doctor and he took a DNA test and he was well aware that he had something coming back. So I had to take him through that, and they were married 57 years. So I'm not judging their relationship in any way. A 57-year marriage is an effort, every day. And I don't judge them for that. I'm not trying to attack anybody's relationships. I just know that I'm not his child, and I had to tell him. And all he said was, I knew they had an affair. I didn't know you were my child. Dr. Phil is on, and I have to go. And he went and he watched Dr. Phil. And that was the end of that conversation.
So, wow. What do you think motivated him to actually take the test?
I think he knew. I don't think there was any other reason that he would have done it. He had a fall, and I think he faced his mortality in that moment. He hurt himself, and he had healed and was home. But, I had asked him for 2 years to take the DNA test because I wanted haplogroup. I just wanted more detail. I still had no inkling that he wasn't my dad. So for me, it was a gut punch. And I also felt so relieved. Like Connie was saying, in the same moment, I felt so much relief because I wasn't his. And all this time I was trying to fit into a box that I didn't fit into. And now I know why. And that made me feel so elated. And also I understood, like Connie was saying, also you go through all these moments in your life. I didn't speak to him for 3 years in high school. I felt very sexualized at home, hitting puberty at a young age, and it didn't feel right or good. My father was very prominent in our town. And I just always wanted to escape, and as soon as I turned 18, I did. I joined the Israeli army right out of high school. And then I moved to Jamaica, and then I moved to Los Angeles. So I was out of there.
Exit stage left. Yeah.
Yes.
Wow. So, and he never spoke to you about it again. So it must have been a gut punch for him too.
When someone's at their zero moment, when they're opening their thing, I just felt like I needed to sit with him and be with him. So I sat through Dr. Phil with him, and every commercial break, he would say something horrible to me about things that he did, and his behaviors. And again, I wasn't judging my parents' relationships. I just wanted to know who my dad was. And I didn't yet know at this point. And it's a process. A lot of times you take a DNA test, you find out who you are not. You don't find out who you are. And it takes a bit of investigating. And, so I wanted answers, and I wanted to know, and I wanted to make sure he was okay and he would survive this, and that we would get through it together, and that he knew nothing between us would change. I was his caregiver for 7 years, and he's still with us. I just decided I could go. So I did. My siblings are taking care of him now, and he's doing okay. It's fascinating. I believe that he did the DNA test so he could tell me the truth.
Wow. Wow. Thank you for sharing all of that, Judy. It is complex, and people take these tests on a whim sometimes, and they give them as Christmas presents and birthday presents, and it can really open up a can of worms.
Yeah. Worms.
With a capital W.
Yeah.
Connie, what was your story like? Why did you take the DNA test?
I didn't take the DNA test. I just kept asking all through different stages of my life. I kept asking my family, and my siblings joked about it. My half siblings, I can now say, they joked about it because I would bring it up all the time. And I would say, one time my dad and I were just sitting out in our garage, and I said, "So, are you my dad?" As casual as that. And he said, "What you don't know doesn't hurt you." And I said, "Was I a mistake?" And he said, "Everybody was a mistake." And so I put that off as okay, and whatever. And then a young 20, I said to him, "Oh, come on. Do you see the difference? I am nothing like the rest of you. Are you my dad?" And he said, "Of course." And that put an end to it. But it didn't put an end to it to me, because I just felt like we were opposites. And my dad and I did not get along at all. We did not. He would take every opportunity to tell me that I thought I was better than the rest of them, that because they hadn't even finished, any people in my family hadn't finished grade 8, that when I wanted to, honestly, when I wanted to get a university education, my dad had said, "Just be like the rest of us." And I said, "No, I can't tolerate that." So then, as an adult, I would make jokes with it. And then my dad passed away, and we came home, and with my mom, and I sat her down in the kitchen, and I said, "Listen, Dad's gone now. And was he my dad?" And she said, "Of course. I know that's bothered you your whole life, but of course it was done." I said, "I'm going to take some hair from one of his hairbrushes before you dispose of his things, and I'm going to do the test because I don't believe it." And she said, "Just believe it and let it go." And then a few months ago, I was visiting my mom, and my mom has dementia, but she's also not mentally well. It's not to do with the disease. She's never been mentally stable. And she got a little bit mad at me in a childlike way that I was leaving her town and coming back to where I live. And she just blurted it out. She said, "There's something you need to know. Dad is not your dad." And I said, I know that. And it took you a long time to tell me. Why did you tell me now?" And very lucid for the first time, she said, "If I would have told you as a kid, it would have caused a big problem with Dad. So that's when I knew he didn't know. If I had told you as a teen, it would have caused bigger problems because you didn't get along. If I had told you when you were an adult and he was, I was his caregiver as well. I was the only one he trusted. and he would not trust my half siblings. He only trusted me. And she said, you were getting along so well, I didn't want to tell you. But now that he's gone, nobody gets hurt.
Mm.
So I'm telling you now, and I don't want to die, or I don't want to get to a different state in my illness that I can't remember to tell you, and I think you should know. And actually, it's the only piece I had with her about the whole thing, because I said, how many other lies have you told me? And she said, I've never lied to you. I said, that's a really big lie you kept for 63 years, except I understand why. But I think that she robbed me of medical awareness, because my biological father died of pancreatic cancer, and I had a similar scare about 6 years ago. And so at the time, I said, like, my dad was very ill as well, but none of those things hit. I think it wouldn't have prevented me from having it, but I would have been able to inform my doctors a little bit more accurately. So that was something that I thought that she had robbed me of. Plus, they were a great family. And like I said, it was my best friend. And thinking back, I've got a whole slew of half siblings that I played with. So I didn't have any respect for my biological dad, because he knew that, unless he didn't, but you have an affair with somebody and then she's pregnant. Although she was married, so I mean, it could have been all just naively going along with it. But that's how I found out, as she told me, and I feel like sometimes that did she tell me for the right reasons, or did she tell me because with her illness, it was a childlike response to, I'm mad that you're going back to where you prefer to live, and I want to hurt you. Because I told her, the information you gave me did not hurt me. It solved a puzzle, and it has made me feel liberated from all of the dysfunctional people that I've left behind so many times. And so you haven't hurt me. You've saved me. And there was a moment when she didn't like that. She every time she would call me, she'd want to talk about it and go over how hard it was for her all these years. And in a very selfish way, making me say, don't worry about it. It's fine. And I stopped myself from doing that. And I even said to her, I'm not going to any longer tell you how fine it is and how don't worry about it. And I forgive you, all those things. I'm not having this conversation anymore with you. You told me, I think, for the wrong reasons.
Wow, that's a pretty powerful story. And I'm overwhelmed with how much you two have in common. Like, it's a lot that's in common. So you talked a little bit about how you felt finding out. What did you do after you had the information? Did you pursue anything different as a result of it? Or was it just cleaning up some family relationships? Like, how did you proceed with that information?
Yeah, my mom told me that the wife of my biological father didn't know, but I guess a sister-in-law did, and it's still my hometown. I went to school there for years. So I called my best friend and I said, can you ask your mom about some stuff? I said, I'm going to use her as the DNA test, because small town, she would know. And of course, my friend who's the same age said, oh, this can't be real. I said, just can you call your mom, ask her if she knows any backstory about me? She called me back within an hour, and she said, as soon as I said, Connie's called me, and she has this news that her mom gave her, and she said, her mom said, oh, she's finally found out. I can't believe it took, I don't want to say my mom's name, I can't believe it took her this long to tell her. And she said, then I knew it was true. And she told the whole story about how my grandmother on that side, on the biological father's side, actually knew, and they all just swept it under and let me be accepted. So then I called a few close friends, and I wanted to throw it at them, because I'm sure Judy did the same thing. You want to see a face and you want to see a reaction on somebody. You want to see, are they horrified? What reaction do you get when you tell the story? So I called 3 of my closest friends and I told them, and they said, you never fit in with that family. Your family treated you poorly. You must be liberated. And they all understood how it gave me a different perspective in life.
Yeah, it's so fascinating. For me, I had been my dad's POA. I set up his 23andMe. I mailed out his sample. So it was like 9:00 at night. We go to bed early. I was just checking, to see if they received his package or not, so that I could tell him in the morning, because I knew he would ask first thing. So I just was looking at it to see if they received it, and it said that it was in, and the list came up, and I'm not on the list. So I found out, and I was sitting next to my husband, who I've known since I was 10, and my parents were sort of the parents in our community that we always had 5 people on my floor growing up. Like, there was always anyone who's having a hard time would always come to my house for comfort and sort of help from my parents. And so my husband grew up thinking of my parents as a certain kind of partnership, and he had a panic attack. So within 10 seconds of me finding out and telling him, I'm taking care of my husband who's having a panic attack. And wow. I had to go get him medication and make sure he was breathing. And that's what it felt like every time I told somebody. The reactions are so mammoth, and they take it out on you. So I called my sister and I told her, and my brother came over, and, everyone gets mad and happy. It's for me, it's a lot like the feelings of grief, except for there's this whole piece about deception in there and being lied to, and just the deceit is the part that eats away. But I also felt so happy that I wasn't all of theirs, which was very interesting. I had this guilt about it and this relief about it. And then, I called, there was a person who worked with my dad and my sister who passed, who became the Surgeon General of the United States. And I didn't know him personally, but he trained my sister on how to be a medevac nurse, and she was killed in a medevac crash. And he went to go get her when she passed. And I felt like he would know someone, that could help me understand my DNA. And so I reached out to him, Dr. Richard Carmona, not knowing if I'd ever hear back, just like searching for answers and information. And I knew the foundation he worked for, and I put his name in front of it, and he responded, and he called me. And by the end of that conversation, he asked if he could be my business partner, because I was so determined to help other people through this. I was so determined to not have anybody feeling the way I was feeling in that moment, because half of my life has been spent in healthcare and helping people heal through trauma. And I had gone to school for all these things, and I didn't really know why, because I was also in film and television, and it finally all kind of snapped in and made sense. And I just felt mission driven, that I wanted to be a support, and I didn't know how, but I knew I wanted to be a support for people who have identity level trauma, is what I call it. So now I'm partnered with him, and the second person really in media that I spoke to about it was Oprah, interviewed me about it.
The Oprah. Let's just get this. Let's just make sure we know who we're talking about.
It still doesn't feel real, but
as if the Surgeon General wasn't impressive enough. Now we have Oprah in the house.
Well, it's just the way it happened, you know, and it's just the way it went. And she's had a DNA surprise. She has 2 sisters, with the same name, and she was telling me about her DNA surprise. And can you imagine doing blood work and finding out you're Oprah's sister? I mean,
no, I cannot.
But it just made me also realize and deepen my understanding of this happens to so many people around the world. Yeah. And now we're estimating we're at 56 million.
56 million people who've had a surprise
since 2019 because of COVID. And now there's 9 at-home kits, and people are just taking the test and not really, considering it. Some, not all. Some people are really searching, and some people are just taking it because it can be fascinating to find out your heritage and more about your health history, But I also felt I felt like it was very important to know what went on medically also with my biological dad, who had diabetes, lost an eye, had breast cancer. I didn't even know men could have breast cancer, and I worked in healthcare. I mean, there was so much about his health history that's vital for me to have longevity. And I'm grateful that I know this now, and trying to figure it out with Dr. Carmona and see how we can support people through this and try and be of help, try and be a support.
Wow. I know I've said wow, like I must have said wow a dozen times on today's episode. I just like, there's such an extreme contrast of emotions going on here because there is this sense of relief and some elation on the one hand that a lifelong hunch and mystery has been solved to some extent. And then there's all this other stuff because of deception and because of people you love and the surprise of it all. Sorry, Connie?
But I believe that I can understand the deception and I'm looking to put it to sleep. I have the answer. I'm done with it. I move on with a better sense of self. And I don't want to make this my life. I think it is a question answered. And so I have an experience, though, when I told my 2 daughters, because they needed to know.
Right.
So I told the youngest one, and she was like, wow, crazy. And then I told my oldest one, and she was a little bit angry. And some of that anger came at me, but she was rational enough to realize that didn't make any sense. And then she grieved it. And again, I'm fine with it. And then she did the DNA testing, and it came back my biological family. And I think there was an element that she wondered if I was being tricked because of my mom's unwellness. She thought maybe I was being pushed aside more with another lie.
Well, you've both really made it clear it's complex.
It is complex.
It's so complex. And, you have decisions to make as a result of finding this information out. And it may not be fun. Well, there may be a little bit of fun. But we've also been dealing with something in my family. My father was adopted, and we've recently cracked part of the story with his mother's side. And I will be talking about that in a future episode. But it's very interesting when you think about, now that I have this information, what will I do? And I would love to hear you give a top piece of advice or two to somebody who gets a DNA surprise like this.
For me, it's what do you want to do next, and how, to take care of yourself is the most important thing. I think when you have a discovery, when you find out, you need time to yourself, and you need to eat, and you need to drink water, and you need to sleep, and you need to take care of yourself. Basic self-care, because a lot of people I've met now, hundreds of people that have gone through this, and the tailspin can be devastating. There's a suicide rate. There's a murder rate, people killing their spouses over it. There's a lot of identity level trauma with it. So I just want to make sure people are okay. Mm-hmm. And if they are having conversations like telling the way I told my dad, or the way I had to, the way I chose to tell my new to me siblings, after I found out who they were, there's language that can be of use and helpful, that is positive and loving, versus shame driven and negative. And I find that to be helpful. So I just think people need to take a breath and think it through, because when you're telling someone about this relationship that they assumed was one thing, you're changing the image that they've had of these people their entire lives up to this point, and that's tender. So just to kind of move through with care.
That's great advice. Do you have any recommendations of a resource or a website? Or I know that you do work in this area right now too. So how can somebody get a hold of you?
Yeah. So now it's been a couple years in that I'm working with Dr. Carmona, and we're doing a podcast and we're doing a TV show. We're doing an 8-episode show, about it. And yeah, they can come talk to us, Truth Seeker Wellness. They can come to we have a private group. Nobody's selling anything there. It's just a place to be and heal and vent and talk, to other people who've gone through it. And that's Truth Seeker, a DNA journey. And that's on Facebook.
Thank you. And Connie, how about you? Do you have any tip or advice for somebody pursuing this kind of discovery?
If this discovery comes to you, it depends on how it came to you. If you sought it out, then you probably have a plan already. If you were just given this information, again, I was given it in a vindictive way. So I chose to make peace with it and to end it and to go on living peacefully, knowing who I am. And that's really, that might be somebody's avenue. That might be the way that some people, if you had a hunch your whole life and you almost lean towards, can this please be true? And then you were given that. I saw it as a gift. And whatever way it was delivered, I saw it as a way of making peace. And then I've gone on.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing. Ladies, what an interesting topic. And, I really find I had somebody on in an much earlier episode. Actually, I had two people on earlier episodes that I'll put in the links that were related to this topic, not exactly the same. But one of them was episode 82, Midlife Reflections on Adoption and Assisted Reproduction. And the expert in to speak about that was talking about how, between Facebook and these DNA cases, people have been looking for 50, 60 years. And a lot of times he tells a story where like an 8 or 10-year-old kid figured it out on Facebook.
Right.
So it's much more accessible than ever before. And just be careful. That's what I would say. There's a lot of, it's powerful stuff out there that you can access, but you want to be very thoughtful and careful as you make these decisions. Any last words?
I just want to say that when all these times when I would, sit at the staff room table and joke about, that's it, I'm going to do the test this week. And, then I would say to a sibling, or I'd say to one of my daughters, that's it, this week I'm doing that test. It would always come into my head, but be careful what you find out and what is it going to change. So I was going to do this test all through my life and know, what is it going to change? And maybe I have a very laissez-faire attitude towards it, but what would it have changed? And, my biological dad didn't acknowledge me. My biological family, actually, one of them said, don't tell his kids, because why on earth their lives? And so again, I was rejected from them. So I looked at it as I was rejected by my biological family, and don't ruin it for them. Don't ruin the image of their dad because he's gone. And then my own family with this rejection. So, I'm estranged from my family, and it is because of the differences, the huge differences.
Yeah, so be careful. Yeah, and Judy, last word?
I was just going to say, I'm very close with both families. I just now understand better why we think so differently. And I'm grateful that I've now met and I'm close with my new to me brothers. I have one brother who still doesn't want to meet yet. I'm okay with that. I'm very much at peace with my mom's decision to not tell me. I get exactly why she did it. Mm-hmm. But it's made my life so much better. And I know that it's now my soul's purpose and my mission is to help people through this, because I keep finding people who are having such a hard time And I did in the beginning as well. And I just want to do something about it. So, but I'm grateful to have the knowledge, and it's never simple, but it can be beautiful outcome.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. Usually we laugh a lot on these episodes. Today, not so much.
Not so much because, like we both have a feeling of being, information we needed.
Yeah.
But it also does unearth a lot of rejection.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much for sharing, for being so honest
Giving us a space to share.
Authentic. It's really important to hear your experience, to learn from it. And it will also help listeners support other people who are going through it. There's just so much to it. So I will include all of the links in the show notes. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Okay, that is it for this episode. Family secrets like this are a lot to get your head around. It's a lifelong deception about something that is core to your identity. By hearing these stories today, your appreciation for the ripple effect of finally knowing the truth kind of gets bigger and bigger the more you think about it and realize all of the connections. So when it comes to the bigger picture in midlife, it's important to think about living intentionally so you don't have regrets. So what does that mean in this kind of a situation? Well, you'll likely benefit from having a clear understanding of why you're looking for more information and what you want from pursuing it. Are you really clear about what you want to do and why you want to do it? Very important to think that through. You may even want to listen to this episode again because, as I mentioned earlier, it's a lot to get your head around. Thinking about the experiences shared today gives you a broader perspective to consider in your own situation. And you'll also be in a better position to provide support to those you may know who are going through their own genealogical puzzles themselves. Now, as you know, this podcast is all about how to love your life again after 50. It's really all about coaching you to be more intentional and to incorporate mindfulness into your life as a regular practice. This is how you put yourself on your agenda. My focus as your midlife coach is to help you get unstuck, clear, and focused on your current values and priorities so you don't have regrets. I can help you create the success you're looking for. That's why I created the Women in the Middle Academy with you in mind, because it's a warm, supportive, and fun coaching community of like-minded women who grow forward together. It's totally possible to feel great about your roadmap to a more fun, meaningful, and regret-free chapter. So email me your questions and let's talk about it and see if it's for you. Go ahead and book your free, no-obligation momentum call at www.womeninthemiddleacademy.com. And if you want to have a book club experience, but with this podcast instead, who doesn't like that? Join the Women in the Middle Podcast Club by heading over to SusieRosenstein.com and click on the Podcast Club button. And finally, for show notes and links, head over to www.SusieRosenstein.com and click on the Podcast tab and look for episode 332. Thanks so much for listening. It's time for you to put yourself first, one thought at a time. I'm Susie Rosenstein, and I'll talk to you next week.